Chapter 261, Visiting and Inviting Personally. Tang Shou said with a serene expression, "Mom, I respect your choice and I'll recognize that man as my father. But you know clearly well that I don't have an ounce of familial affection toward the Tangs whatsoever. My family and roots are in this place." For a long time, Su Lingyun was silent before she nodded silently. Tang Shou spoke again, then, "When will you see him?" As if realizing something, Su Lingyun then suddenly grabbed Tang Shou's arms with a nervous and agitated expression on her face. "Xiao, Mom knows that you're a doctor, and I also heard that you're extremely skillful at that. Are you able to cure your dad?" Tang Shou shook his head. "I don't know anything specific about the condition he is in, so I'm gonna jump into wild conclusions now." A trace of disappointment was revealed in Su Lingyun's eyes. But still, she nodded and said, "Xiao, let Xiangfei take care of your grandma at home. We'll go to Beijing now." 20 years had passed, and never once had she ever seen her husband. Hearing the news that her husband was still alive, Su Lingyun wished she could have wings to immediately fly to Beijing to see him. The more she delayed, the more her suffering. Tang Shou shook his head and slowly said, "Mom, I think we still have to wait for a while, because I feel that some people will come to invite us to Beijing." Su Lingyun blankly stared at him and asked with a confused expression, "Who would want to invite us there?" "The Tang family," replied Tang Shou. Su Lingyun's expression changed. She harbored a wariness toward the Tangs for 2 decades along with the fear of them taking her son away. She was afraid that her son wouldn't be close to her any longer. Yet, she wasn't afraid now. Her son had grown up, and the affection between them would never be snatched away neither by fame nor fortune. "Xiao, why are you so sure that the Tangs will come to invite us?" Tang Shou replied faintly, "Mom, they want us to recognize the ancestors, and they also want me to save him." Su Lingyun thought for a while before slowly saying, "Xiao, you're their descendant after all, and of the Tang family's bloodline. So you're supposed to recognize your ancestors." "Humph," Tang Shou sneered, "why should I? Because the Tang family's blood flows through my veins? If I ever had a choice, I would rather have the Su blood flowing within me. Mom, they are nothing but strangers in my eyes, whereas I have always been reluctant to relate to any strangers. And Mom, I respect your choice, so I wish that you can also respect mine." Su Lingyun opened her mouth, yet she couldn't find any words to refute her son. Eventually, she could only helplessly nod and let Tang Shou follow his decision. "Xiao, please go out. I want to calm myself first. If the Tang family don't come today, we'll go to the capital tomorrow," said Su Lingyun. Tang Shou nodded and went out of the room. As he saw Su Xiangfei doing the laundry at the courtyard, he was silent for a moment before approaching him. He then took out half a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and pulled out one to give to him. He lit their cigarettes and puffed deeply. After that, he leaned on the tree beside Su Xiangfei and said serenely, "Can you tell me how you figured things out?" Su Xiangfei pinched the cigarette with his wet hand as he then forced a smile. "It was not me that figured things out. It was my father that made me realize it. Virtues will be rewarded and retribution shall also befall onto the wicked, whereas some people are bound to be held responsible for everything they did. I see that as akin to what I did to you once. Had it been not for the awesome police work, perhaps it would have been you in jail now." "Just these?" asked Tang Shou with a tranquil expression. Su Xiangfei shook his head, "No. In fact, I did resent you before I came back. After all, you were quite ruthless, you ruined my family and also destroyed my father's remaining life. But when I secretly eavesdropped the conversation between you and Auntie, only then did I realize how ridiculously absurd I was." Tang Shou nodded. After a moment of silence, he then said slowly, "Go repeat your high school's 3rd year again. After that, take the CET next year. You don't need to worry about your welfare, my mother will look after you." Su Xiangfei suddenly smiled, and it was particularly bright. He then shook his head and said, with my academic grades, I'm afraid that I can only be admitted to an ordinary university. It's impossible for me to enter the top universities even if I have to repeat my third year of high school again. I've been thinking quite thoroughly, and I'll be staying here until Grandma's injuries fully recovered. Then, I'll leave Qinghe County and go outside to live on my own, relying on my ability. Regardless of how well I fare with life later, I will eventually return to the Su family, to my roots. Then write my cell number. I hope you contact me only if you're forced by circumstances, said Tang Xiu. Su Xiangfei nodded silently. Tang Xiu spoke no longer. He took a deep puff and then walked toward the outside of the courtyard. Tang Xiu. Su Ben and Su Quan, who saw Tang Xiu coming out, quickly called out to him. Anyways, you two will have to stay at home for a few more days. For the time being, I can't return back to Star City, I will have to go to Beijing to deal with some matters. When I come back to Star City from the capital, I'll contact you again. Su Quan replied with a smile, that would be great. Originally, Big Brother Ben and I also planned to leave for Star City a few days later. Because you need that silver dragon grass, we also want to get some of them. Tang Xiu said quickly, I advise you not to do that. Even if you take more people, you can only look around the outer periphery of the mountain. You said yourselves that that fierce beast is very dangerous, and ordinary people are basically unable to injure it. So, you would most likely have casualties occurring on a trip deep in the mountain. Su Ben knew Tang Xiu's nature and disposition. Upon seeing him speak with all seriousness, Su Ben immediately replied, then we'll listen to you. We'll tell the other fellow villagers to only go uphill, and no matter how many silver dragon grasses we find, we won't traverse deep into the mountains. Tang Xiu nodded, please remember. Before summer vacation ends, I'll make a trip back here to solve that fierce beast. Anyways, you two can go take care of your work. And wait for my call. All right. Su Ben and Su Quan replied as they walked towards Su Ben's house next door. 2 hours later, 2 black Autos slowly parked outside the courtyard. For bodyguards in casual attire then dispersed as Tang Min opened the door and helped Tang Guosheng out. Are they here? Tang Guosheng looked at the shabby wooden doors as well as the dilapidated courtyard. Tang Min nodded, Father, according to the information sent to me, they live here. I also used GPS. This place is where their family lives. Tang Guosheng looked at the 4 bodyguards and spoke with a deep tone, you're all to stay outside, and no matter what happens, you must never step into the courtyard. Understood. The 4 bodyguards immediately saluted as they received the command. Tang Guosheng walked through the front gate. As he entered the courtyard and saw Su Xiangfei, an astonished expression flashed from his eyes as he asked him, young man, might I ask whether Su Lingyun and Tang Xiu live here? Su Xiangfei stood up from the chair and asked back, yes, they do. And you are? Tang Guosheng nodded, I'm Tang Guosheng. Are they here now? Su Xiangfei turned his head and shouted, Auntie, someone is looking for you. Su Lingyun and Tang Xiu came out of the house. As Tang Xiu saw Tang Guosheng and Tang Min, he sighed to himself. He could guess as to why they came, but he didn't expect that it would be this fast. Perhaps, after he left Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Tang Guosheng had sent people to investigate him. With a cold and detached expression, Tang Xiu said, why did you come here? I told you that we have no relationship with the Tangs whatsoever. Tang Guosheng replied bitterly, Xiu. My name is Tang Xiu, growled Tang Xiu. Tang Guosheng was silent for a moment. He then replied helplessly, Tang Xiu, this is your mother, my daughter-in-law, right? Su Lingyun was dumbfounded. Even though she heard from Tang Xiu that some people from the Tang family would be coming, but she had never thought that Tang Guosheng would personally come. She knew him. Not only was he the senior official of the state, he was also her husband's father, her nominal father-in-law. You. I'm Su Lingyun. Tang Guisheng walked towards Su Lingyun and Tang Xiu as he said bitterly, I sent people and almost swept over the entire Star City 20 years ago. But it was very unfortunate that I couldn't find the both of you, mother and son. Yunda only told me that you're called Little Yun. Thus, I didn't know your full name without further information. 20 years ago, after I personally went to Star City to fetch Yunda, I couldn't find you, so all these years I've let you, mother and son, suffer hardships. Tears burst out from Su Lingyun's eyes as she heard it. Tang Min came to her side and spoke to her all smiling, sister-in-law, why don't you call him father? Su Lingyun opened her mouth, yet, her voice couldn't get out as it was stuck in her throat. She knew why her husband came alone to Star City that year. He was driven out by his family, and that year, she had just left from her countryside village, working as a nurse in a hospital in Star City. At that time, nobody was taking care of Tang Yunda. Slowly after, they then fell in love and lived together. Afterward, she got pregnant, but she had yet to have a marriage certificate. But her husband told her his true identity and also learned that a huge crisis befell the Tang family at that time. Tang Guisheng was forced by circumstances and had to expel her husband from the family and announce that he cut off the relationship between father and son. At first, due to the anger her husband harbored, he cut off any contacts with his family. But when she got pregnant, driven by excitement and joy, he called Tang Guisheng. She had seen this father-in-law on TV, but this was her first time seeing him in person. Hence, she couldn't call him father as of now. Tang Guisheng forced a smile, Little Yun, I know that it's quite awkward for you to call me father-in-law. However, you're, after all, my son's wife, and you've given birth to the bloodline of the Tangs. I don't want to force you to recognize me as your father-in-law if it's against your will. I only hope that I would be able to compensate you, the mother and child in the future. Su Lingyun raised her head and looked at Tang Guisheng as she said, I must see Yunda. Tang Guisheng replied without hesitation, the reason I came here is that I want to invite you, the mother and child, to Beijing. Before I arrived here, I also learned that your mother is injured. If you want to, you can also take her along. Su Lingyun turned to Tang Xiu. With a tranquil expression, Tang Xiu said, the purpose of my mother going to Beijing is to see him, but our family doesn't belong in Beijing. If you may, I hope you let us see him, for we're a family in the truest sense. But the Tangs, to us, are nothing but strangers. Chapter 262, The Tang Family Members. Tang Guisheng watched Tang Xiu calmly as a light of wisdom flashed in his eyes. He had experienced countless hardships in life, and he was good at identifying people's characters. Thus, he was able to distinguish Tang Xiu's disposition to some extent after a brief contact. Hence, he didn't feel angry about Tang Xiu's remark. Certainly, had it been others daring to speak to him with this attitude, he would have flown into a rage already. But toward Tang Xiu, he owned him far too much. Tang Xiu, if you can treat your father, he would be free wherever he goes. If you can't treat him and insist to take him back to Star City, I would also agree with that. But I have a condition. The medical facilities in Star City are incomparable to the facilities in Beijing. Thus, if you want to take him over, I need to send specialists and professional medical staffs along with him. As for your remark just now, I know very well about the resentment inside your heart. It was indeed my failure in not finding the both of you, mother and son, that year, causing the both of you to endure hardships and suffering all these years. But, your surname Tang, the bloodline of the Tangs, and the Tang family is also your family. Tang Xiu snorted coldly and spoke no more. Tang Min looked at Tang Xiu's eyes before her vision landed on Su Lingyun. She then said with a smile, second sister-in-law, I think you should go to Beijing with us. I believe that second big brother has told you about the situation in our family. Even though the Tangs are a wealthy and powerful family, yet the elders have never intervened much in their children's marriages. They won't look down at you. And father, he personally rushed to Star City and stayed here for some days in the past. Even since second big brother has been in a coma for several years, eldest brother took some time to come to Star City to find you. Having said that, Tang Min walked towards Su Lingyun. She then grabbed Su Lingyun's hands as the smile on her face disappeared, replaced with some bitterness. Second sister-in-law, do you know the most disturbing thought mother has always been carrying with her all these years? It's about the missing grandson she has outside. Oftentimes, when people mention about the second big brother, she would fall into tears, being distressed by her beloved son, yet she also misses her own grandson. Su Lingyun's heart was shivering, a warm feeling gushing inside. Her resentment toward the Tangs reduced a lot. All these years, she had always been thinking and wanting to seek for her husband, yet it was out of her imagination that the Tangs also felt the same for them. Tang Min spoke again, second sister-in-law, please come with us to Beijing now. Our family is there. If you don't want to live in the old grand residence of my parents, I will buy you a villa. And if my nephew wants to study, he can study at Beijing University, I will fully support your every need. Su Lingyun opened her mouth as her sight fell on Tang Xiu with the intention of asking for assistance. Tang Xiu said indifferently, I'm sorry, we're not accustomed to life in Beijing. Also, we don't need even a dime from the Tangs. My wealth might be incomparable to the Tangs, but it's enough for me and my mom to have a rich life. Su Lingyun then added, yes. We have a good life here. Xiu has grown up now and he also has some abilities, whereas my restaurant business is also very good. So we really have no intention to live in the capital. Tang Guisheng said with a heavy tone, Little Yun, Tang Xiu, no matter where you want to live, I'll approve. But you can freely speak to me your needs, as long as it is within my abilities to provide. Even if it would heavily damage the welfare of my Tang family, I'll do it. You can bear in mind that the Tang family owes you, mother and child, and we shall compensate you from now on. Tang Xiu was startled inwardly. An inconceivable expression flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect that Tang Guisheng would make such a big commitment. At this moment, his sealed heart slightly cracked a bit, yet for now, he couldn't make himself feel close and intimate with the Tangs. Bring the stuff inside. Tang Min shouted toward the entrance of the courtyard before turning around and speaking to Su Lingyun with a smile on her face. Second sister-in-law, father heard that your mother is injured, and he has specially arranged some people to buy some nutrition and supplements. Also, since it's our first meeting, we couldn't be careless about the etiquettes, could we? As for those people who wounded her relatives, apart from the county hospital's vice president who disappeared, they will immediately be punished. Immediately, the 4 bodyguards in front of the courtyard quickly carried over a dozen boxes. This? Su Lingyun was quite at a loss and didn't know how to respond. Tang Xiu then spoke faintly, Mom, since they have shown good intention, we'll accept them. Also, we don't hit people smiling at us. They are not looking for trouble, so we shan't ignore them. Please let them enter the house. Su Lingyun sobered up and quickly said, You're too kind, please come inside. My mother is there. A while after, Tang Guisheng and Tang Xiu met Zhang Shi. After Zhang Shi learned their identities, she threw curses at them at first, but after she understood the whole story, only then did she show a bit of happiness. She felt happy for her daughter as well as excited knowing that her son-in-law was still alive. Xiu, Grandma knows that your medical expertise is very good, so you have to cure your father. His disappearance for so many years was caused by special reasons, so you can't blame him any longer. Go to the capital and heal him. Grandma wants to see my son-in-law while I'm still alive. As Zhang Shi learned about the situation, she called Tang Xiu and advised him. I'll try my best, Grandma. Tang Xiu nodded. 10 minutes later, Su Lingyun was done with the packing and left the house's courtyard. You drive the car and lead the way. Mom will sit in my car. Tang Xiu put their suitcases into the trunk as he spoke to Tang Guisheng and the others. Tang Min quickly said, I'll also take your car so I can chat with second sister-in-law on the road. A trace of a smile showed on Su Lingyun's face. All right. Tang Xiao didn't prevent her. All in all, for whatever Su Lingyun decided, he wouldn't object to it. After getting in the car, he saw Tang Min affectionately holding his mother's arm as they chatted in the back seat. He then started the car and followed the two black Audis as they quickly left the Su village. Although he just got his driver license, he followed the two cars at high speed and drove northward. Beijing, famous garden villa complex. At this time, the third elder of the Tangs, Tang Guishou, was reading the information in his hand. In front of him, two middle-aged men in military uniforms were standing straight, with 1 and 2 stars ranking on their shoulders. Bang! The door was thrust open forcefully as Tang Guishou's son, Tang Yongkingham, strode inside the room in a rush. Panting and short on breath, he shouted, "Father, it's a big event." Tang Guishou's brows knitted as he snorted coldly, "Even if the sky is falling down, you still must be reverent and steady as empty Tai. Look at yourself now, what's got into you to act improperly like this?" Tang Yunqing replied urgently, "No, father. It's really a very important matter. Uncle and the others are coming back to the capital in a hurry. I just received the call from the eldest brother saying that we must rush to the ancestral residence within 4 hours. Tang Guishou was startled. "We need to rush to the ancestral residence? Did Yunpeng tell you what happened?" Tang Yunqing said, "The second big brother's son has been found, and now they're returning with the mother and son to Beijing. Also, most importantly, this time uncle went secretly to Star City to seek for the divine doctor surnamed Tang, and the said doctor turned out to be the second big brother's son, Tang Xiao." "What?" Tang Guishou's expression changed, a light bursting out from his eyes. He didn't expect that his direct nephew would be found. The person that the old madam of the family had been missing the most all these years, the one and only grandson who lived outside the family whom they never knew if he was still alive or died. Great. Yunqing quickly informs the others and tell them to hurry to the ancestral residence in 4 hours. I really didn't expect that the missing grandson turned out to be a divine doctor. If he can cure Yunda's sickness. As Tang Guishou thought up to there, the excitement on his face grew more intense. Tang Yunqing quickly said, "Father, I'll immediately go inform everyone." Beijing Royal Dragon Club. Tang Wei was holding a crystal bottle as he savored red wine. Around him, 2 young men hugged an attractive girl each as they drank and had fun joyfully. The 2 young men, one was called Zhong Lu and the other Zhang Hongyan. Both of them were scions from giant families in the capital as well as Tang Wei's best buddies since childhood. Bang! The deluxe box's door was kicked open from the outside as a lovely girl in a dress strode inside. As she saw the people sitting on the sofa, particularly the 2 attractive girls accompanying Tang Wei, her expression changed immediately. She sprinted toward Tang Wei and, under everyone's surprised gaze, she grabbed Tang Wei's arm and quickly spoke, "Big brother, quickly come. Grandpa has decreed that all family members must return to the ancestral residence. We just had a major event." Tang Wei was at a loss as it was both funny and embarrassing. He rolled his eyes as he replied, Tang, the sky has yet to collapse, it's still atop of our head. What are you anxious for? Besides, hasn't Grandpa just gone outside of the city? What kind of matter would happen anyway?" Right, how did you know I was in this place?" Tang quickly pulled him out the box. After that, she quickly spoke, "That doesn't matter. Come with me now, the second uncle's son has been found, and now he's on the road back to the capital along with Grandpa. Hurry up, will you? If we arrive late and Grandpa arrives and find that we're not in the ancestral residence, he will be angry with us." Second uncle's son? Tang Wei fell into a daze as his expression suddenly changed. He broke from Tang's hold and went back into the box. He looked at Zhong Lu and Zhang Hongyan as he said, "You should have heard it, yes? There's an urgent matter, so I gotta get back home." You just continue playing here, I'll look for you after I got time. Zhong Lu and Zhang Hongnian looked at each other and nodded. They knew Tang Wei's second uncle who had been in a vegetative state due to an accident 20 years ago. But they didn't expect that he had a son outside. Big brother Tang, off you go, quickly. Beijing, in a PLA military unit. Inside an olive green barracks, the commander of the Special Forces unit, Tang Ning, was supervising the drill in the shooting range. At this moment, a young man in military uniform ran toward him and handed a mobile phone, saying, "Commander, it's a call for you." Tang Ning took the mobile over expressionlessly. He then spoke with a deep tone, Tang Ning speaking. "Return to the family's ancestral residence at once." Tang Yunqing's voice transmitted through the phone. Tang Ning frowned, "Fourth uncle, I'm still training my team members, what matter could it be that you can't say it on the phone? Your second uncle's son has been found and old father is bringing him home from Star City now." "What?" "I'll go back immediately." Chapter 263, Everyone gathered at once. Beijing, Fairview Lane. Tang Ying was standing in front of a big desk, looking at an unfolded landscape painting with a shocked expression. Beside her, Mu Weining was showing a shallow smile. "At first, I didn't have much hope for this Tang Xiu. The reason he agreed to the contest was that he didn't want to comply with that bastard's request. Who would have thought that Tang Xiu would be even more skillful, turning my misfortune into a blessing, getting me such a peerless painting with no cost at all?" With envy, Tang Ying exclaimed in admiration, "Amongst the many masterpieces and peerless ancient paintings I have seen and admired, none of them can be compared with this painting. If I have the chance, I must ask him to paint one for me too." Mu Weining laughed lightly. He said he wouldn't paint that easily, and even though I think his painting technique is godly, he's really not that enthusiastic about painting. Tang Ying said, "You don't know what he's thinking. But then, you can help me by telling him something good about me. If something like that worked, it would have been good. But Tang Xiu, that person's personality, is kinda weird." Mu Weining forced out a smile and replied. "Weird?" Tang Ying was surprised. "In what way?" Mu Weining raised her lily-white slender hand and gently spun her beautiful hair down in front of her forehead, showing various kinds of flirting gestures as she smiled. "Do you think I'm beautiful?" "Beautiful, you're really beautiful." Tang Ying was feeling funny and at a loss. Who doesn't know you're hailed as Beijing's first beauty? Amongst all the handsome princes in the entire Beijing, who doesn't want to get close and have a beauty like you in their embrace? I dare say that of all men with normal sexual orientation all over the world, there will be none who don't want to get you. Mu Weining laughed, yet, Tang Xiu is the only one who doesn't think so. What? Tang Ying stared blankly before shaking her head. No, I don't buy it. Unless he's not a man, otherwise he won't give a blind eye to you. Mu Weining said, I did test him, and he gave me a very direct answer. Do you know what he told me? What did he say? Asked Tang Ying curiously. That time I asked him whether he has a problem with his sexual orientation, or my beauty doesn't attract him. Said Mu Weining with a smile and continued, guess what he told me? He said that he has a normal sexual orientation, and if I'm willing to sleep with him he also won't refuse. Yet, he said that it would only be a one-night stand, without any feelings attached, thus it would be very boring, meaningless. Furthermore, he also told me that I'm the type of woman he doesn't feel like bothering. Tang Ying's eyes stared wide. It was like hearing a joke. However, Mu Weining's story deeply attracted her, as she couldn't wait to hear of what kind of woman was the said man was too disinclined to bother. Mu Weining then continued, the kind of woman he doesn't feel like bothering is someone like me, a virgin. He said that he doesn't fear anything, yet he fears to be followed with troubles, and for him, it will be very troublesome later if he takes my first time. Pfft. Tang Ying couldn't help laughing without her wanting to. Damn, he's really way too weird. This is the most unfathomable thing I have ever heard in my life. What kind of man who doesn't like pure women giving them their virginity nowadays? This person is truly good. Because he's afraid trouble, he doesn't want to bother touching a pure innocent woman? It's really, damn, I'm speechless. Mu Weining covered her mouth as she chuckled, but afterward, she said slowly, but I could feel that the reason he doesn't want to touch a virgin is not that he doesn't want to, but it's because that he doesn't want to take the responsibility. Could it be that he's an irresponsible man? Said Tang Ying with a surprised expression. Mu Weining replied to her, it's not like he's an irresponsible man, I think. It's because he doesn't want to take the responsibility, hence, he doesn't want to bother touching a pure virgin maiden. The smile on Tang Ying's face gradually faded away. After staying silent for a long period of time, she then raised her thumb and exclaimed in admiration, damn, I really admire him, perhaps even worship him. Firstly, he's able to keep his composure in the face of your temptation. From this only, he's an upright gentleman. Secondly, because he knows that he won't be able to take the responsibility, he won't touch a pure maiden. Such a man is definitely a good man. Suddenly, a strange expression was revealed on her face as her hand pulled Mu Weining and circled around her twice, lamenting, TSK, TSK, it's really unexpected that Miss Mu, the dignified first beauty of the capital, has been shot by the god of love. Don't deny it. I know you. You would never have tried to entice him if you didn't have the thought, no? Mu Weining's charming face blushed as she rolled her eyes and snapped, don't spit out such nonsense. It's just that I couldn't bear about his hell-bent attitude to drive me out. Did you think, bah? A girl doesn't mind being with a man together in the room, yet, he cares about that. And I just wanted to probe him whether he was really for real or just a hypocrite. Tang Ying replied to her in a disdaining manner, don't make excuses, girl. I know you since you were a baby until you grew up. How many boys have been trying to do everything they could to court you? How many people do all kinds of ridiculous things merely because they want you to glance at them? But you're always looking at them from the summit and has never even bothered to care about them. Yet, this Tang Xiu certainly has made you impressed. Mu Weining corrected her once again, I'm not impressed. It was just out of my curiosity. Don't tell me that you're not curious about him? After all, he's a young man who possesses great abilities, yet his low profile gives people goosebumps. Tang Ying hesitated before laughing, I'm indeed very curious about him after I heard this matter from you. But, it's way different in essence compared to you. You're attracted to him, whereas I only heard about him from hearsay. Beautiful girl, you too have heard the saying that, once a woman is curious about a man, that is exactly the prelude of falling in love with that woman. Mu Weining gaped. Ring, ring, ring. A mobile's ringtones sounded from Tang Ying's bag beside her. Tang Ying gave Mu Weining a teasing look. She took her mobile, connected the call and laughed, fourth uncle, are you looking for me? After a moment, Tang Ying's smile froze as her beautiful eyes stared wide, an incredible light flashing from them. As she listened to the other party, she involuntarily exclaimed out loudly, you mean, the second uncle's biological son has been found and is now on the way to the capital along with Grandpa? Great, I'll immediately return to the ancestral residence and wait there. After the call ended, Tang Ying quickly stuffed her mobile into her bag as she then looked at Mu Weining and said, Weining, things happened at home, I gotta get back quickly. I'll see you again after I got more time. Mu Weining raised her brows and asked curiously, Big Sis Ying, if I remember correctly, isn't your uncle in a vegetative state since 20 years ago? His son. An excited expression glittered from Tang Ying's eyes as she nodded, that's right. Before my uncle fell into a coma, he indeed already had a woman, and the woman also gave birth to a child. 20 years ago, the elders had sent a large number of people to search them in Star City, but unfortunately, they failed. It's unexpected that we found him 20 years later. If my grandma knows about this, she will be pretty excited. Mu Weining suddenly understood, then go, quickly. I'll be here until the start of classes at Shanghai University. You can come here if you have free time. All right. All the directly related family members of the Tangs in the entire Beijing had all received a call from Tang Yunqing as dozen members of the family quickly went to the Tang family's ancestral residence. The Tang family's ancestral residence. It was a manor with a fully enclosed courtyard that occupied a big area in Beijing. Under the grapevine's frames, a silver-haired old lady was holding a pure white Persian cat in drowsiness. In front of her, the tea on the table was cold. She was Qing Changyu, Tang Guixing's wife. Mother, why are you sleeping here? Tang Yunpeng's wife, Kai Xinru, carried a bag of fresh vegetables. A nanny of the family followed her as they came to the courtyard. Qing Changyu opened her eyes and immediately sat a bit straighter upon seeing Kai Xinru. She then waved and smiled, "It's all right. The weather is hot right now, so I won't catch a cold. I originally wanted to drink tea here and listen to the songs on the radio. But somehow the radio broke and I almost fell asleep." Kai Xinru laughed, "Mother, that is father's broken radio. Earlier he told me to throw that out, but I forgot about it. Let's forget it, I'll buy you a new one." Qing Changyu laughed, "That won't do. This radio is your father's baby. Even though it has been repaired many times, but you can still fix it every time. All right then. Do you want to change clothes? This evening our family will have an important event. Look at these fresh vegetables and meat, as well as the seafood. I just bought them from the market with Big Sis Wang. I guarantee that all of them are fresh and delicious. What important thing has happened? What event is worth cooking so many food?" asked Qin Changyu, surprised. "Grandma, you didn't know?" At the courtyard entrance, Tang Wei was half striding as he said aloud. Qin Changyu was surprised as she watched Tang Wei and Tang Tang coming inside. Then, she asked with a confused expression, "What should I know about?" Tang Wei said, "Your grandson, whom you've been missing for 20 years, has been found, and Grandpa is bringing him back." "Ah, right. What's his name?" "Tang. Tang Shou." "Yes, that's his name." Qin Changyu was stupefied and her expression changed greatly. Even though she was already old, she had a strong and healthy body, hence, she stood up directly from the chair and asked urgently, "What did you say?" "Yunda. Yunda's son? My grandson, has been found." Tang Tang walked toward her side, grinning. She held her arms as she smiled and said, "Grandma, we've found him, truly. I got a call from Dad to drag my brother over here." An intense excitement could be seen on Qin Changyue's face. Her body trembled. Immediately after, she saw that her eldest son, Tang Yunpeng, came from outside, followed by her grandson Tang Ning. "Yunpeng, you also know about it?" Tang Yunpeng nodded. "Ah. It seems that they have told you, Mom." "Actually, I was in Star City accompanying Father to seek treatment when I got the news. The person who cured Father is your own grandson, Tang Xiu. I also had gotten a call that Father and Tang Min are bringing Tang Xiu and his mother, Su Lingyun. And they are on the way to Beijing. Furthermore, I also have sent some people to fetch second brother from the rehabilitation center." Qin Changyu fell into tears. Her lips quivered as she spoke out of excitement, "Great, it's so great that we've found him. We've found him." Immediately after, the other members of the Tang family arrived one after another. Chapter 264, The Rejection from the Heart. Ring, ring, ring. Tang Yunpeng's mobile rang. As he answered the call, he said a few words and then put the mobile away. "Mother, second uncle, Tang Dong and Tang Yan are in Beijing airport, they will arrive an hour later at the latest." The smile on Qin Changyue's face was getting bigger. She then sighed, "Your second uncle is staying in Jingmen Island and hasn't returned for a full 5 years already. I didn't expect that because of Xiu's matter, he would also take a special trip here. Finally, our Tang family have all been gathered together. Tang Guosho at the side snorted coldly, second big brother hid in Jingmen Island all these years and enjoyed a peaceful life, leaving me and eldest brother to deal with the terrible mess in Beijing. This time he's coming to Beijing, so I have to make him bleed and give me a few slaps. Qin Chongyu laughed, third brother. You and your eldest brother are actually well aware inwardly, right? Even though second brother lives in Jingmen Island, but he has brought us, the Tangs, many benefits all these years. But alas, you don't want to give him face. Besides, the waters in Beijing are too deep, so if our Tang family is defeated one day here, we'll have Jingmen Island as our retreat point. Tang Guosho was silent for a moment before he forced a smile and said, Sister-in-law, I actually understand what you're saying. It's just that, when I think about how second brother enjoys life in Jingmen Island while eldest brother and I are being kept busy in Beijing, it kinda makes me quite vexed. Bah, let it be. I won't grumble in front of so many juniors. The other Tangs couldn't help laughing. Quickly, Tang Guoxing, along with Tang Dong, Tang Yan and the other 4 or 5 other family members arrived. Tang Guoxing's body wasn't in a good condition. He was quite frail, looking sick and pale, yet, he was particularly in high spirits when he bickered with his third brother, Tang Guosho. At the highway intersection in Beijing, Tang Xiu's Land Rover was stopped by the police because of his license plate's number limit. As a result, the highway police patrol was examining Tang Xiu's driving time and discovered that his length of experience as a driver was in violation of traffic regulations. Officer, could you get around the regulations this once? Sitting in the driver's seat, Tang Xiu asked the traffic police officer. The expression of the several traffic police officers was serious. One of them shook his head and said, I'm sorry, sir. I'll have to ask you to get off the car. At this moment, Tang Min, who was sitting in the back seat, slowly opened the rear window. She handed out a credential document and said lightly, stretch the rules. We have important matters. The traffic police took the document. As he eyed it, his complexion changed greatly and immediately saluted toward Tang Min and respectfully spoke, Hello, Minister Tang, I didn't know that you were in the car, so I hope you can forgive us. Please. Having said that, the traffic police officer returned the document to Tang Min. Tang Min nodded. She then faced Tang Xiu and said, Let's go. It's all right. Tang Xiu's eyes swept traffic police officers outside. He started his car and drove toward the 2 Audis that were parked on the roadside 200 meters in front. He secretly lamented inwardly, authority is really a good thing. If it was ordinary people, perhaps not only would they have to accept fines and have penalty points on their driver's licenses, they also might have to face an administrative detention. At Tang family's ancestral residence, Tang Xiu parked the car as his eyes flashed. Just as he entered the entrance to the lane, he saw 4 armed security guards standing guard over there. Along the way, at least a dozen or so guards were pacing back and forth in the vicinity, either the ones that were in the open or hidden. At the front door of the Tang's ancestral residence, there were also 2 guards in military uniform with white gloves and armed firearms. However, the sight that attracted his attention was not those guards but the dozens of members of the Tang family that were standing outside the courtyard. The first one who caught his eyes among the crowd was the silver-haired old lady who was in front. Second sister-in-law, Tang Xiu, let's go. Tang Min smiled. Tang Xiu nodded calmly. He then turned around and looked back. He saw that his mother was somewhat restless and anxious. He then spoke to her, Mom, let's get off. Su Lingyun hesitated before she nodded silently. Qin Chongyue's vision had been staring at the 3 cars. When she saw her husband, Tang Guosheng, she rushed excitedly and asked, Where's my grandson and my second daughter-in-law? With a smile hung on his face, Tang Guosheng pointed at the Land Rover Tang Xiu and Su Lingyun were getting out from. Qin Chongyue's eyes instantly locked on Tang Xiu. She walked toward them, staggering somewhat. As she arrived in front of Tang Xiu, her quivering hands grabbed Tang Xiu's arms with a face full of excitement as tears broke down from her eyes as she sobbed, "Why you're my grandson, my dear grandson?" Tang Xiu frowned and somewhat had the urge to repel the old lady, as well as rejecting the other Tangs. After a moment of silence, he said slowly, "I am, nominally." Qin Chongyu forcefully hugged Tang Xiu with tears flowing down. She wailed and cried. Tang Xiu didn't struggle. His expression was tranquil as ever and was quite helpless as he felt Qin Chongyue's tears wetting his clothes. He could really feel the familial affection. This kind of stirring emotions, this kind of excitement, the feeling of crying tears of joy, it caused him to be in a particularly complicated mood. Only after a long period of time did Qin Chongyu release Tang Xiu after Tang Min persuaded her, yet her hands were still grabbing Tang Xiu's hands tightly. Then, she looked at Su Lingyun and said excitedly, "Your little Yun, the one Yunda said? My second daughter-in-law?" Su Lingyun was very emotional. The familial affection shown by the Tang family touched her heart. She nodded, "Yes. I'm Su Lingyun, Yunda's wife." Qin Chongyue's other hand grabbed her and said with tears flowing down her face, "Child, our Tang family didn't do right by you all these years. Hence, the both of you, mother and child, have been living outside the family. I believe that you must have endured a lot of pain and hardship. But you can rest assured that after we found you, we, the Tang family, will never let you receive a little bit of bitterness ever again. Whoever dares to bully you later, tell this old woman, then I'll sacrifice everything in my short remaining life to fight them." Su Lingyun's eyes were also filled with sparkling crystalline tears as she nodded repeatedly and heavily. She enjoyed the feeling of being recognized by her husband's family as well as enjoying the sudden atmosphere of affection. Qin Chongyu pulled Su Lingyun and Tang Xiu. As they came in front of the other members of the Tang family, she said, "I'm introducing you to them. They are all part of our Tang family." Tang Xiu abruptly interrupted her and said indifferently, "There's no need to introduce us. I still have important things to do later on, so take me to see Tang Yunda. If I can cure him then it would be for the best, but if I can't, that means his fate isn't good." What? Apart from Tang Guisheng and Tang Min, a dozen members of the Tang family looked at each other in dismay. It was as if they couldn't believe their ears. What was this nonsensical remark? Tang Xiu finally broke from Qin Chongyue's grasp as he spoke to Tang Guisheng, "You should still remember what I've said to you before. You have your Tang family, whereas we have ours. The Tang family's distinguished status is not for us, the common people. Thus, you don't need to waste the time and feelings. Take me to see Tang Yunda, otherwise, my mother and I will leave immediately." Tang Yunpeng shouted out of anger, "Tang Xiu, why did you say that? Even if you think that we're only strangers, but we are still your relatives after all. In the presence of so many of your elders, how could you?" Tang Xiu waved his hands to interrupt him and said with a cold and detached expression, "Don't use the elders to pressure me. I was born and grown up in the Su family. If not for my mother insisting on it, I don't even want to be surnamed as Tang. So leave the familial affection out when you talk to me. I'll ask you one last time, where's Tang Yunda?" "Xiu, you shut up." Su Lingyun was angry as she scolded him. For a moment, Tang Xiu was silent. After that, he stepped back and said, "Mom, I respect your decision, but I also hope you can understand my choice. I have no feelings toward the Tang family members whatsoever. No, not at this moment. And I'm afraid that it's very hard to have in the future. And truth be told, I actually didn't want to come to Beijing, but I have given a promise to you and grandmother to cure Tang Yunda, which is also the promise I gave when I attended to his father's illness." At this moment, all Tang family members' faces had turned quite unsightly. Tang Xiu couldn't care less about them. During the 10,000 years he was in the immortal world, The only people he remembered were only his mother and maternal grandmother, who occasionally doted on him. People that were tied through blood to him, yet without emotional attachment, were unable to hold him. This time, his mother was the sole reason he chose to come to Beijing. Su Lingyun fell into silence. She had experienced very few dramatic scenes, and she didn't know how to deal with the situation at present. Her son refused to recognize the Tang family, so she was having a complicated and mixed feeling inside, but she also didn't want to force him. Tang Guisheng sighed to himself. He then spoke to break the deadlock. Tang Xiu, it doesn't matter if you don't want to recognize us. I know and understand why you deny these family members inside your heart. But even so, I believe that even if your heart is made of stone, everyone will still be able to melt your heart with our conducts and deeds hereafter. The offspring of the Tangs are the Tang family's descendants. We have never cut off our familial affection, nor have we ever abandoned and left our own blood behind. Let's go. Your father should have been sent here, I'll take you to see him personally. Tang Xiu nodded and grabbed Su Lingyun's hand. On one hand, he wanted to give her courage, and on the other, he also wanted to show the Tang family that, at present, he had the ability to protect his own mother as well as telling them that he didn't need anything from them. A few minutes later, the Tang family members took Su Lingyun and Tang Xiu to the deepest parts of their ancestral residence. As Su Lingyun looked at Tang Yunda that was lying on the bed, big teardrops fell down from her eyes. Yunda. Feeling sorrowful and sad, she cried and flew toward the edge of the bed. Her hands that were full of calluses tightly grasped Tang Yunda's skinny palms. 20 years. It had been 20 years thinking every day and night, dreaming of seeing her husband again. Today, the dream finally turned into reality. She cried and wept bitterly. Telling all the thoughts and missing feelings, venting all the grievances and sorrows she endured all these years. At this moment, even if she had to die, she'd die with a smile on her face. Tang Xiu, who stood at the side, looked at the unconscious man on the bed, the skinny Tang Yunda, who looked as though firewood. He sighed inwardly. He had never thought that by the time he saw this man, it would be in this situation. After calmly waiting for several minutes, waiting for his mother's emotions to stabilize, he gently patted Su Lingyun's shoulder and said, "Mom, let me have a look. If I can cure him, you can be sure that I'll do everything I can." "All right." A strong and intense expectation burst out from Su Lingyun's eyes as she quickly retreated to the side. Chapter 265, Cousin. Under everyone's watchful gaze, Tang Xiu grabbed Tang Yunda's wrist and his fingers pressed at his pulse, quietly feeling it. What made him rather grateful was that, while Tang Yunda's pulse was rather weak and suffered severe loss of vital energy, it was still sufficient to support his bodily functions. Furthermore, even in this condition, he could still live 8 to 10 years more. Releasing his wrist, Tang Xiu pulled him up and set his body sitting straight. Whilst pressing his 5 fingers on Tang Yunda's head, he directed his star force and released his spiritual sense. Brain domain. It was the most mysterious part of the human body. When Tang Xiu became a supreme in the immortal world, he had been able to utilize and control 60% of his brain area, whereas the rest 40% he had never been able to develop or use it. As Tang Xiu examined him, his face turned unsightly. He found that Tang Yunda's brain nerves had been severely atrophied with blood congestions in the neuronal nodes. The congestion had even coagulated, and there were signs that it had blocked the blood supply to the brain. Furthermore, the part of brain ventricles connected to the mind sea had been cut off, leaving a particular ash-gray substance blocking it. It was precisely this ash-gray substance that trapped his consciousness in the mind sea, causing him to be unable to perceive the outside world. Trapped consciousness, Tang Xiu had experienced it once before. When a wisp of his soul crossed over to the immortal world in the past, whereupon it emerged on someone else's body there, it was trapped therein for 3 months, and eventually came out of the predicament by chance to become the owner of that body. The feeling of having one's consciousness trapped was very depressing as well as painful. Wanting to rest yet unable to sleep, floating and drifting in the endless darkness, driving one to wish for death. If one's mental constitution was tough, they might be able to persist for a long time, otherwise, they would be driven to insanity, mentally disoriented and devoid of any strength and capability of thinking. 4 or 5 minutes later. Tang Xiu slowly retracted his palm and quickly kept his spiritual sense. He would still be able to save Tang Yunda, but the process would be very dangerous. The danger was not just applied to Tang Yunda, but to him as well. "Xiu, how is it?" Standing at the side, Su Lingyun asked with anticipation. Looking at his mother's expression, Tang Xiu sighed inwardly. While he had low emotional intelligence, with his superb intelligence, how couldn't he be able to feel his mother's anticipation at this moment? "Mom, is he really important to you?" After staying silent for a moment, only then did Tang Xiu speak. Resolutely replying, Su Lingyun said, "Very. The both of you, father and son, are very important to me." "Equals?" Tang Xiu savored her answer inside before he finally made a decision. His gaze turned to Tang Guisheng and spoke in a heavy tone, "I dare not guarantee to have 100% chance of curing him. But I'm willing to give it a try. Prepare a spacious place where nobody can't disturb us. Also, find me a set of silver needles." Tang Guisheng's eyes lit up as he asked in a deep tone, "I'll arrange it immediately. Aside from silver needles, what else do you need? If your Tang family has the ability, go to the medicinal herb market or herbs shops and buy a lot of dragon fume grass. Bear in mind that this herb is extremely scarce and very expensive. However many you can find, buy them." "Dragon fume grass?" Tang Guisheng turned and shouted sternly, "You all heard it. All of you look for it, and be quick about it. Within 3 hours, all that Tang Xiu needs must be found." "Yes." A dozen Tang family members rushed outside. Tang Guisheng then gave Tang Xiu and his mother a look whilst secretly sighing. Having been silent for a moment, he said mildly, "Tang Xiu, it would perhaps take some time to find the medicinal herb you need. It's night already, so let's have dinner first. Even if you're not hungry, your mother is." Tang Xiu took a look at his mother who grabbed Tang Yunda's hand as he silently nodded. "I'll cook." "I'll cook for you myself," said Qin Chongyu quickly as she hurried to leave the room after saying that. A warm feeling sprouted inside Tang Xiu's heart when he looked at her back. He indeed rejected the Tang family's members, but seeing Qin Chongyu's actions, he could see that each and every expression and action brought along a deep affection and love within. He was not someone whose heart was made of stone. Qin Chongyu spoke a few words and hurriedly left. It touched his heart. He even began to silently recognize this paternal grandmother of his for the first time. "We're also going out." Tang Xiu turned to Tang Guisheng and said. At the main hall of the residence. Tang Xiu sat leaning on the sofa and closed his eyes. He had decided to treat Tang Yunda, for which he had to conserve his strength and maintain his spiritual force at the peak. It was because he'd have to use his spiritual sense if he wanted to clean up the ash-gray substance blocking the brain ventricles, and the mind see. If he was an immortal and used his spiritual sense, it would be a cinch. But the present him was too weak, not even having the confidence to clear those ash-gray substances in one go as well as clearing the blood congestion, and nourishing the atrophied brain nerves along the way. The human brain was very complex. He was perfectly aware that he only had one chance. If it couldn't be done at once and in the case that other problems cropped up with Tang Yunda's brain, it would likely claim Tang Yunda's life. If his mother was willing to wait, he'd rather do that. If he was stronger he'd be much more confident. But, he didn't want to do it. His mother had waited in suffering for her husband for 20 years, waiting to serve him after she saw him. After nearly an hour, Qin Chongyu entered the main hall in an apron. With an expression full of affection, she looked at Tang Xiu and said softly, "Grandson, the meal is ready. Call your mother and let's have a meal together." Tang Xiu opened his eyes and nodded to her amiably. He got up and went to the next room, finding his mother holding Tang Yunda's hand and telling him all her thoughts and feelings in the last 20 years. Tang Xiu once again sighed inside before his hand touched his mother's shoulders, saying, "Mom, let's eat. Eat and drink to the full to raise your spirit, so you can better chat with him." "All right." Su Lingyun turned around with a trace of a smile on her face. It seems to her that at present, the sweetness of life had come to her after having gone through bitterness. Her two biggest wishes for 2 decades, one was to have her son to pass the CET smoothly and be successfully admitted to a prestigious university, and the second was to find her missing husband. She got both wishes now, making her quite content. Although her husband was still in a coma at present, if her son could really cure him, she would no longer complain even if she died. There were only 4 people on the table for dinner: Tang Guisheng, Qin Changyu, Tang Xiu, and Su Lingyun. The dining table was full of fragrant dishes as Qin Changyu constantly served the mother and son the veggie dishes. She wore a bright smile on her face, causing Tang Xiu to have a good appetite. He wolfed down 2 full bowls of rice and also ate a lot of dishes. At this moment, Tang Xiu could finally feel that the Tangs truly cared about his mother and him, as well as clearly felt the atmosphere of familial affection. With only a word from Tang Guisheng, a dozen members of the Tangs, including their daughter-in-laws who were holding children, left their ancestral residence to find dragon fume grass. "This family is very good." Lamenting inwardly, Tang Xiu put down the chopsticks after eating to the full. "Grandpa, Grandma." At this time, a voice came from outside the dining room as a young man strode inside. After he saw Tang Xiu, he fell into a daze, wearing a hard-to-believe expression on his face. Tang Xiu was also astonished, for he didn't expect that it turned out to be Chu Yi. More so after Chu Yi called Tang Guisheng and Qin Changyu maternal grandfather and grandmother. So to say, that meant he was his cousin? "Tang Xiu, how are you here?" Chu Yi stared at Tang Xiu with a silly expression as he murmured. Faintly smiling, Tang Xiu got up and replied, "Surprised?" "What surprise?" "It's a shock. I just can't believe that you turned out to be my cousin. Please don't speak about being relatives yet. Are you hungry?" "Have a meal first," said Tang Xiu faintly. The smile on Chu Yi's face finally faded away as he rubbed his hands and smiles. "I just had a meal. I was managing something in Tianjin City recently, so I didn't know about this. Fortunately, my mother called me, so I hurried back from Tianjin City. Anyways, I've sent some people to find the dragon fume grass you need. However many they can find, I'll have them delivered shortly." Curiosity hung on Tang Guisheng's old face as he asked, "You knew each other prior to this?" Chu Yi chuckled and smiled, "Yes, Grandpa. And we kinda have a strong relationship. Tang Xiu was my brother prior to this, but never would I have thought that he turns out to be my cousin. If Bai Tao and Long Zhengyu knew about this, they would have been shocked." Astonishment suffused Tang Guisheng's eyes. He knew very well about his grandson's personality. Intelligent, sensible, thoughtful, as well as prudent and possessing keen foresight. Ordinary people simply wouldn't enter his eyes. He didn't know as to how would this grandson of his know Tang Xiu. Qin Changyu, however, didn't notice nor mind this. She just smiled upon seeing Chu Yi's arrival, yet her vision was reluctant to part from Tang Xiu. After hesitating for a moment, Tang Guisheng then asked again, "How did met him?" Chu Yi smiled, "I was in Star City with Bai Tao. The famous young master of the Long family in Star City, Long Zhengyu, is our friend. We met Tang Xiu through him." "Grandpa, you don't know that this cousin of mine possesses superb abilities, even Bai Tao, and I truly admire him." Staying silent for a moment, Tang Guisheng then said, "I had arranged people to investigate him. Yet we only know that he did have a friend called Long Zhengyu, but we actually never thought that you also know him. He's indeed very capable, my asthma has been cured by him." Chu-yi grinned. Grandpa, he's not only amazing in the medical field. Chu-yi. Tang Shou frowned and growled at him. Even though Tang Guisheng did send someone to investigate Tang Shou, but after all, the time was too tight, so the information was not thorough and complete. Therefore, when he heard his grandson's remark, he became more curious. Chu-yi, tell me. I really want to know what other aspects this grandson of mine has.